Welcome back to A Better Choice Homestead. My name is Kelly, and on my channel I focus on food, growing it, preparing it, and preserving it. I do 3 videos a week. On Tuesdays I do a cook with me video where I focus on quick, healthy, simple, nutritious meals that you can usually start and serve in under 30 minutes. Fridays I do freeze drying, and on Sundays I usually do something garden related or garden harvest preservation, which today that is one of the things we're going to be doing. I'm going to be canning the green beans that I picked this week out of my green stock. So I did an entire original green stock, all the tiers filled with green beans, and so I will show you exactly how much that produced in case you are contemplating getting a green stock or you have one but you haven't grown green beans in them yet. I think I'm going to get about 6 jars from that harvest, and they're done. They are a bush bean. Bush beans produce once, they set all of their flowers and then they produce and they're done. So that's all I'm going to get out of those, but I'm actually quite happy with the result of those. So I think we're going to get 6 jars. And I also was able to pick some of my dragon tongue bush beans, first time growing those, and a little disappointed on the maturity of the plants at this point. I planted them at the same time as my green stock, but they had barely even flowered yet. So I didn't get many of those, but I think I have enough for 1 jar. And then while these are going, I'm actually going to be making some banana bread in my new bread maker. I just purchased a Zojirushi Virtuoso bread machine just to make my life easier in the kitchen. Usually when I make bread, it is typically sourdough, and I make that by hand. Every once in a while I will make a loaf bread, but I thought, you know what, it's very time consuming and I don't have a whole lot of time. So I went ahead and got a bread maker, and so far I have made zucchini from my garden, and that came out amazing. I have made a sandwich loaf bread, that also was really good. And then I actually went out to dinner with my family last weekend, and we went to an Italian restaurant, and they serve an incredible stretchy bread that you dip in their hot tomato oil sauce. And I decided I wanted to try to replicate that bread as well as the sauce, and I did. So I'll show that on another video, but I was able to get a nice stretchy bread out of the bread machine with some amazing sauce for dipping. All right, but let's get started on the green beans. Now, if you're new to pressure canning is for low acid foods. And you have to pressure can green beans. You cannot water bath can them. But green beans are a good thing to start with because it's so simple. You can do them in a raw pack, or you can do them in a hot pack method. I'm going to be doing raw pack because it eliminates the step of having to boil the beans first. You are only going to be pressure canning them once they're up to pressure for 20 minutes for pints and 25 minutes for quarts. That's a lot less time than, say, meat, which you might need 75 to 90 minutes for. So this is going to be really quick, but I will walk you through all the steps and we're just going to get started. So I have a Presto pressure canner. I also have an All-American, but the All-American that I have is their largest one, and my stovetop hates it. It kills my digital display, so I can't use it on my stovetop. I have to use it outside on a gas burner. But in here I can double stack pints. I don't think I'm going to need to. I should be able to get 9 on the bottom of this, and I think I'm only going to be doing 7 jars. And you have to check with your canner instructions for how much water you want to start with. Mine is 3 quarts, and that is going to keep the food safely processing throughout the entire time. So as you pressure can, your water starts to convert to steam, which helps build the pressure to get you to that elevated temp, because just boiling water is not enough to safely preserve low acid food. Because you're creating steam and you're releasing it for 10 minutes before you even let the pressure start to build, you're going to be losing some of that water in here. So you need to know how much your canner needs to start with, because some of it's going to be converted to steam and leave the pot. So in your canner, you're going to need something to put on the bottom so that the jars don't come into direct contact with the bottom of the pan. That can cause breakage. So if you bought a canner new, it will come with some racks, at least 1. Mine came with 2 because I can double stack, but I don't need this one for this canning. recipe. So I'm just gonna set this one aside. And then I'm gonna add my 3 quarts of water. And I'm gonna make it warm water because we are gonna be pouring boiling water into the jars. So I'm just gonna start with some warm water. 1 quart, 2 quarts, and 3 quarts. Okay, the other things I have ready to go is I have some white distilled vinegar out. I'm gonna use this for 2 things. I am going to use it with a towel to wipe the rims of my jar. I could use water for that because I'm not putting anything sticky or oily in these jars, nothing that's gonna interfere with the lids getting a proper seal other than maybe some salt. So I could use water, but I need to pour some white distilled vinegar in here after my jars are loaded anyway, because I have hard water and it leaves like a white film on the outside of my jars, and so this vinegar just helps cut down on that. The other thing I have is a funnel. Maybe not even need this, but I always get out my supplies. I have a jar lifter here so I can lift the jars in and out of the canner. I have a 1/2 teaspoon because I am going to be doing pints, and you can put a 1/2 teaspoon of non-iodized salt into your canning jars, or a full teaspoon if you are doing quarts. So I'm going to be using salt, and I'm going to be using Redmond's real salt. This is perfectly fine to can with. I've got my jars ready, I've got my new lids, and I've got my bands. My jars are washed and they are not sterilized. I know that in the past the recommendation was sterilized jars when canning, but they've changed that because they will self-sterilize after 10 minutes in boiling water. We're gonna be doing these at higher than boiling temperature for 20 minutes, so they're perfectly fine not to pre-sterilize. And then I have my debubbler tool. So this is what I'm gonna use to try and get the air out of the jar. You wanna make sure that you remove your air bubbles always, because the air bubbles can adjust your headspace, and if your headspace isn't right, it can cause siphoning during your canning process. And so can not properly doing a finger tight seal on your bands. So I'll show you that when we get to that step, but let me grab my beans and let's get some jars loaded. All right. This is what I got out of my green stock, other than these top beans that are the dragon tongue bush. So with raw pack, you're just gonna lay your beans in there. And what I did was I washed everything and I trimmed the ends. And then for the dragon tongue, because they were pretty big, I think that they were, I missed them. And so they got pretty big, but they're still very tasty. So I'm gonna go ahead and can them. And then you just lay them flat in here. So you want to do them, peak of ripeness. Make sure that you don't have any that have any rust spots on them. That can be common sometimes in green beans. You just want to make sure that they're healthy looking and they are not overly bulged with seeds. They're not old. You want to preserve things at their peak of ripeness. So I am just going to get these loaded in to all the jars. Yeah, there we go. So I have a full jar of the dragon tongue bush, and I'm just gonna put my 1/2 teaspoon of salt in there. And I'm gonna start my kettle because I need to cover these with boiling water. So let me get that started too. All right, now that that's going, I'll fill the rest of my jars with beans. Right here, I'll actually show you what the green stalk looked like laid in with the beans, and just show you what that looks like so you can kind of get a visual of what to expect. And then this is the result of one original green stalk filled with green beans. So green beans, again, you want them fresh, you want them washed, you want them trimmed, and you can add salt to the jar if you so choose. Green beans have a lot of vitamin A in them, and vitamin A is also known as retinoids, and retinoids are important for your immune system health as well as eye health. They also contain a good amount of vitamin C. Vitamin C is also an antioxidant, and that is also good for your immune health as well as collagen production and just overall skin health. They do have fiber in them as well, and some of it is soluble fiber. So they also help support your heart as well as your digestive health. They have protein, which is important for your immune support as well. And they have some minerals in them too, which are really good for you, such as manganese, which is good for your bone health and for wound healing. And they also have calcium, which is good for bone health. A nice product to have fresh, if we eat these fresh. I usually do my pole beans fresh though. So the bush beans, they all come on at once, and so they're all done at once. And so it's easy to harvest them all at once and then get them processed. And these are Canter beans. That's the name of this type of a bean. And they're very, very thin and tender and stringless. I really like them. They grow really well in my green stock, but I would be interested to know if anybody else grows Canter, but not in the green stock, because maybe they get bigger if they have, more space than the pockets allow on the green stock. So if you have grown Canter in your garden and not in a container, would you let me know in the comments below? I'd love to know if I should be, maybe sectioning off and dedicating a space in one of my beds for these next year. We're gonna add the salt. You don't even need to put salt in here. It just helps add a little bit of flavor. I'm done with the salt. And now I'm just waiting for my water to boil. And then we're gonna do add water to 1 inch of headspace. And this tool came with my canning kit, and it has steps on it. So if you put it on the first step here, it's 1 inch down here. So if I put this on the edge of my jar, then this should not touch anything until the very bottom of this, and that's where you want your water level for 1 inch. This is how you would measure headspace. Over time, you can just eyeball it too. The 1 inch headspace is right at about the first ring, just above the neck of the jar. Okay, my water is almost boiling in the kettle, so I'm gonna go ahead and get this canner turned on. I'm just gonna put it at a medium for right now, and we'll turn it up once we get everything inside. All right, we've got water that is warming up in here, so I'm gonna go ahead, turn the kettle off, because this is very, very warm water now as well. Just use this to fill my jars to about 1 inch of headspace. So what I do is I fill it to the first band on just above the neck of the jar, and then I'll go in and debubble and adjust my headspace if needed. So for debubbling, you want to use, they say something plastic, because they say it's not good to put something sharp like a knife down into your jar, because you could nick your jar. Use common sense, do what works for you. A lot of people lose this tool over time. I just kept the box. So my kit came with the funnel, jar lifter, this tool, a magnet lifter for the lids. And I kept the box, and I keep everything in the box, and that way I don't lose it. But if you do, you can use a chopstick, you can use a plastic knife, like, the plastic cutlery, or, whatever your common sense tells you to use. The reason they tell you not to use a knife, a metal knife, is because they don't want you to nick your jar, because that could compromise the integrity of the jar, and it could break the jar while in the canning process or even after. So this working it down all the sides and down the center. You don't want to just poke up and down. You have to move the food around in here to displace those air bubbles and get them up. And I lifted up some beans doing that, so I'm gonna push those back down, and then we're gonna check our head space. So again, I'm gonna put my jar on the shortest rung here and make sure that this part is just touching the water. And that looks about perfect, 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 and perfect. I have filled this just to this ring just above the neck of the jars. Doesn't look pretty? And here are the dragon tongue bush beans. They have purple streaks on them, and I've not canned these before, so I'm definitely interested to see how those come out. Now that all of the food is in, our salt is in, our water is in, our headspace is adjusted because we've debubbled, I'm gonna take some of that vinegar and I'm just gonna wipe the rim of the jar. That is gonna, like I said, get off maybe any salt particles that I may have dropped on the rim that may interfere with the compound on the lid from properly seating during the canning and cooling process. And this also helps you feel the rim of your jar just to make sure that there aren't any nicks or cracks that could do the same thing, right? They could prevent a seal from happening. And we all put so much time into canning that we certainly don't want to lose the contents of our jar because we didn't get a good seal. Okay, now that those are done, I'm gonna place my lids on. I switched over to 4 jars canning lids, I think in 2020, maybe 2021, can't remember. It was when Ball was having a hard time keeping up with everybody's canning craziness, and you couldn't get them. So I've used them since, I love them, they do great. All right, here's finger tight. So you're gonna put your band on your jar, and I always turn it counterclockwise until it seats, right? Until it's even all the way across. And then I'm moving it forward until it won't move any more until I actually apply pressure. So that's as far as it will go, and then I give it a little turn, just a little turn. I have in the past over tightened my jars and I experienced a lot of siphoning. I couldn't figure it out. I was following every step properly and I was always siphoning, and I realized it was because I was over tightening my jars. You just want them finger tight. And the reason for that and the reason for your headspace is this has to steam, and the steam has to vent during the canning process. And so everything is measured properly, including the tightness of your bands on your lids, to allow that process to happen. And if it doesn't, then it can siphon because it's trying too hard to get that steam out of the jars. We're ready to put our jars in. I'm just using the jar lifter to do that. And then I'm going to dump that white distilled vinegar down into the water as well. This is what the canner looks like, loaded and ready to go. I've already checked my lid. I know that it's clear through here. I can see through there out the other side. So this is the steam vent. This is functioning properly, this little vent here as well. So I just need to line up the arrows. So my canner has an arrow on this handle, and I need to line that up with this arrow here. So as long as I do that, seat properly just like this, and then I can close it. I'm gonna go ahead and turn the heat up in here now because we want this to come to a boil. Once it comes to a boil, steam is going to start to come out of this vent. And once I see it coming out in a very steady stream, I'm gonna time 10 minutes. And once 10 minutes are up, I'm gonna go ahead and I'm going to put my weight over the top of this to hold the steam in. That's what's gonna build the pressure inside of your canner. This is a dead weight. This is the weight that shipped with the Presto. And so this is not doing anything other than holding the steam inside. And if it does start to rock back and forth, this is weighted at 15 pounds per square inch, or PSI. So if you get to 15 pounds of pressure in here, this will start to jiggle. You know you're too high and you have to turn it down, but you also have to watch your dial gauge on here. So I'm canning at 10 PSI for my elevation, and with this type of a weight, you actually go up to 11. And if you drop below 11 using this weight, you have to start over again. So when I first learned to can, I can this way using this weight, which is a 15-pound weight, and I would have to watch this dial the entire time, which is so stressful and tedious. So I went ahead and I purchased the weighted gauge. So this comes as 5, 10, or 15 pounds. I have to can at 10 pounds. So I have one extra ring on here for 10 pounds. So I will put that on here after we vent for 10 minutes. And then as long as this is rocking throughout the entire canning process, we don't want it, jiggling super fast, but as long as it's moving, then we know we're at 10 pounds of pressure inside the canner, and I can stop watching this. I want to stop watching this if I'm using this one, because it's continuously rocking and continuously letting steam escape to hold it at 10 PSI. So if steam is constantly escaping to hold this at 10 PSI, this is gonna be fluctuating, right? Because we're not holding all that steam in there. So if you're using a weighted gauge, you don't use the dial gauge at all. But if you're using the 15-pound dead weight that came with your Presto canner, then this is what you watch to make sure that you're at the right PSI. Well, that is coming up to steam and pressure. I am gonna go ahead and get out the ingredients for the banana bread, and we're gonna get going on that. This is a good use of my time because I'm gonna be in the kitchen canning anyway, and I think you can probably see we are starting to steam, but I'm looking for a full steady stream before I start my timer. So for the banana bread, we need 3 eggs, and we need the eggs beaten. So I'm just gonna drop some into a bowl and get those beaten. And I'm gonna put my eggshells in the sink. I save my eggshells and I dry them and I powder them down. And then in the spring, I use them in my garden for added calcium to help prevent blossom end rot on my plants. So if you'd like to see me do that, let me know in the comments below. I've shown using the egg powder in my garden when I planted my garden out this year, but I haven't done a video of how I make that, and I did use all that I had. So I've got some eggshells saved up, and I'm gonna need to get that done soon and get that packaged away for next year's garden. All right, here is 3 eggs beaten, and with a bread machine, you put the ingredients in the order that they're listed in the recipe. This is a full steady stream of steam, so I'm gonna go ahead and start my 10-minute timer. And we're gonna put the eggs in. And next we need a 1/4 cup of vegetable oil. I am gonna use some avocado oil because I don't have just plain vegetable oil. And avocado oil is a healthy fat, and it has a really light taste to it. So it's a good substitute for vegetable oil. Then I need a teaspoon of vanilla. I need 1 cup of mashed bananas. So I have a bunch of bananas in the freezer that I purchased, I don't even know how long ago, but they were starting to turn brown on my counter. So I just peeled them all and chopped them into slices and rolled them up in some plastic wrap and then put them in a freezer Ziploc bag so that I could use them for something else later on, like a smoothie, and now banana bread. So I've defrosted these and I'm just going to add those in. and that is about 1 cup of mashed banana. Then I need to add 1 cup of flour. And with this machine, it is recommended that you put the flour into your measuring cup with a spoon. So it's light and fluffy when it goes in. So that is what I'm gonna do. With baking, it's pretty precise on measurements to get a good result. So I'm just gonna follow their directions for this machine. And I'm just gonna use the back of the spoon to level out the flour off of my cup. So there's 1 of 2 cups that I need. There we go. All done with the flour, get that out of the way. I need 3 teaspoons of baking powder. 1, 2, 3. 1 teaspoon of baking soda. 3/4 cup of sugar. And this is just granulated sugar. Need 1/2 teaspoon of salt. And that's it for now. Now this is just gonna go into my new Zojirushi Virtuoso bread machine. And then it's gonna beep when it's time to put in the walnuts, and I'm gonna be putting in 1/2 cup of walnuts, but let me show you the machine. Here it is. I'm gonna go ahead and plug it in. Here are my ingredients loaded in the order that they are supposed to be added. And you just push down things that hold the blades inside the machine. I need to close this, and then it says that I should choose the cake course, which is course 13. So I'm gonna push up on the course arrow until I get to 13. And then it says that I should choose a light crust. Hit crust control until I see light. And then I just push start. And that's it. But we've got 2 more minutes on the canner before I put the weight over the vent. So in the meantime, I'm just gonna get that kitchen cleaned up. Okay, now that our timer's gone off, I'm gonna go ahead and just pop the weight over the vent pipe. And now this is going to start building pressure. When it gets to 10 pounds of pressure, this is gonna start to rock back and forth, and that's when we're gonna start our 20-minute timer. So I'll bring you back when we're at that point. We've got our jiggle going on, so this is exactly what we want to see. So now we can set our 20-minute timer. My bread machine just beeped, so it's actually time now to add my walnuts. Open the machine, and there it is, all mixed together. The other thing I need to do at this point, just get any flour that is on the side of the machine down. So I'm just gonna run the spatula down the sides, just encourage it to get into the batter. And I have a 1/2 cup of chopped walnuts that I am just gonna put in here, and it is going to mix those in. So there we go. Close the lid, and this is now going to do its thing. All right, the timer is gonna go off on the canner in about 20 seconds. And I just wanted to let you know what I'm gonna do here. So as soon as the timer does go off, I am gonna lower the heat. I'm not gonna turn it off completely just yet. I'm gonna lower it from about halfway down to from where it is now, because I want this to come down, releasing its pressure slowly so that we don't get any shock. There's my timer. So that we don't get any shock to the jars inside the canner. A major change in pressure or temperature can shock your jars, can cause siphoning. It can even break your jars. So the timer's gone off, so I'm just gonna lower this heat. almost all the way. I'm gonna get it 5 more minutes. The dial gauge is at 0, but our vent pipe is still sticking up. So this is still under pressure. We need to wait until this goes back down. So until that happens, we can't touch this. You never want to move or especially open a pressure canner while it's still under pressure. So as soon as this releases, I will go ahead and pull this off and twist the top just enough to let it acclimate to ambient temperature and pressure. There we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and just pop this off. Let that sit 5 minutes. And then we'll crack the lid. All right, here's a part that a lot of people skip, but I try not to. So I am just going to twist the top open and leave it. I'm gonna leave it like that for at least probably 20 minutes because I really want the jars to slowly acclimate so I don't siphon and so we don't have any compromising of the jar integrity. I still have about 45 minutes left on the bread. I'm gonna be in here anyway, so I am just gonna let this really acclimate before I take this lid off. So I'll see you back here in about 20. It's been about 20 minutes, so let's take a look inside. I'm lifting this away from me just in case there's still steam, which there is, right? I don't wanna get a steam facial. Looks good. Oh, I can hear them pinging. We've got clear water on the bottom. It looks like we might have siphoned just a little bit. I see some discoloration on the top of a couple of the jars, but the water looks pretty clear, so not too bad. I'm gonna let them sit like this for 5 more minutes and then we'll take them out. I've already got a towel set up on the counter to place them on there because the counter is cold, the jars are hot. Again, trying to avoid temperature shock on the jars. So canning is a process, and if you want your food processed properly, safely, and for longevity, you gotta give it the time that it needs. So 5 more minutes, then we're done. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and get these jars out, and I'm just gonna pull them straight up. And these are those dragon tongue bush beans. They now look white, not green. Again, that's the first time I've grown them. And you can see that they have all floated to the top. All the liquid is at the bottom. That's perfectly fine as well. I'm just going to set these onto a towel and leave them undisturbed for 12 to 24 hours. It's going to take that long for that lid to fully form a seal on the rim of the jar. These look lovely. I really do like these Canter beans. They're just so petite, so thin, just so tasty, and stringless too. Let me give you a look at that water. That is pretty clear. And you can also see that the level has gone down quite a bit. So we started out with 3 quarts of water. We probably have 1.5 quarts less. That's because of all the steam that was released during the 10-minute steam release process. And here's the finished product. They look gorgeous. So I have 7 pints now to put back on my shelf to replenish what I ate through this winter. And I will keep canning beans until the end of the season. But these look fantastic. So now we're just waiting for that bread to finish. A few more minutes. This took about 2.5 hours total. Canning does take quite a while, but it's totally worth it in my opinion. The bread is done. It smells incredible. It looks amazing. I am really loving this bread machine. So to get it out, it's very hot. That's why I have the oven mitts on. You just tilt it upside down and it comes right out. It's got little mixing blades in there and those come out so you can wash this. And then of course, those leave little holes in the bottom of the bread. But look at this bread. It looks incredible. I wish you could smell this. Let's cut a slice and see what the inside looks like. Looks perfect. Cooked nicely all the way through. And that was an evening in the kitchen where we did the pressure canning of the green beans and made some banana bread. I hope you learned something if you're trying to learn how to pressure can and preserve your harvest, or maybe a haul that you got from the farmer's market. It's not as intimidating as you think. It's rather easy once you know the steps. And if you have any bread recipes that you would like to share with me, because I'm new at owning a bread machine, I would love to hear them as well. Thank you so much for joining me. My name is Kelly. You're at A Better Choice Homestead, and I hope you come back and visit again soon.